All right, we ready to start? All right, hello, welcome to Reading Night. I'm Mrs. Nemero, I'm part of the first grade team. And I'm just going to start by talking about some reading strategies we do in class when we teach our guided reading groups. So in terms of guided reading, the students are on reading levels, and we determine that based off of a test called the DRA. And so in the first quarter, when they come to us in first grade, we want them on a DRA 4 to 16 as the on grade level range, and then a DRA 6 is the target for the first quarter. And then it kind of progresses as the students progress and make progress. So in the second quarter, the range is from a DRA 8 to an 18, and then the target moves to a 10 for the second quarter. And then as Metz will talk about the third and fourth quarters. So when we're in guided reading groups and when we teach the students to read, when they get to a word that they don't know, an unknown word or a word that's difficult for them, we teach them strategies or just for them to just sound it out. So the complexity of the strategies will change as the books become more difficult, so I'm going to kind of focus on the lower level reading strategies. So for the first and second quarter in first grade. So some of the strategies that we go over are things like, so when they get to a word they don't know, we'll prompt them and we'll say, well, what can you do? What do you know about this word? Do you see a part you know? And kind of prompt them to start trying to problem solve the word on their own. And then some of the strategies that we teach them are things like, so we'll do a preview of the story or like a story walkthrough to kind of get them a little bit of background knowledge on the book before they go ahead and read it. So like an example would be with The Lizard Loses His Tail book. I would kind of go through the story. I would tell them about the front, cover and the title, and then I would go through and ask them things like, well, what do you see happening at the beginning here? What do you see in the picture? And then we model as we go through the story. So some things I would do would like attend to difficult words, maybe a word that they haven't seen before, or a word that wasn't technically a first grade word. So an example I had for that was, on this page here, it has the word kingfisher. And most students haven't seen the word kingfisher. They don't know what type of bird this is. So usually I'll kind of just introduce this page and say, well, what do you see here? And the student will say bird. And I'll say, okay, well, the name of this bird is kingfisher. And I'll say, what do you hear at the beginning of kingfisher? And they'll say, oh, I hear a K sound. And I'll say, okay, can you find the word kingfisher here in the sentence? And then they'll usually be able to find it with the K. And then that kind of introduces to them that word so that when they see it later, when they read it independently, they already know what word that is. So that's one thing I do with the story walkthrough. We also model strange structures like that. So basically that's when you see a sentence that maybe it sounds a little different than we speak. So I have an example of that here. Here we go. So here it starts, here comes kingfisher, away goes lizard. And I'll say to the students, away goes lizard. Do you ever say, away goes mom, away goes dad? And they'll say, no, we don't really talk like that. So what I usually do when we get to a part like this is I'll model that sentence for them. So I'll say, I'll go first, you listen. Away goes lizard. Now you try it. And then I have them try it to kind of model the way that I read it. So that way, again, once they get to that structure that sounds funny to them, they've had a little bit of experience with it, they kind of know how to go forth with reading that. So those are just some things we kind of focus on at a story walkthrough. Another thing, we do one-to-one matching. That's where we want them pointing at each word as they say it. So for this here, we would want them saying, here comes kingfisher. And again, that's for reading books at the lower level where it's good for us to see that they understand that they're matching the word with the print and knowing that each time they see a word, they should read it. Once they get up into the higher level books, we kind of want them to get away from that pointing, but at the lower level, it's really good for us to continue with that. Another thing we do, we say, get your mouth ready, and that's a way for them to attend to the beginning sound. Again, like with the kingfisher, I might say, if they got to that word and they didn't know how to spell it or how to read it, I might say, all right, get your mouth ready. What sound do you see at the beginning? And they'll say, k. And I'll say, good job, because then they can recognize that is what the word should start with, that kind of sound. Checking the picture to see what would make sense. So an example of that in the Sally's bucket. So, oh, and Lizard loses his tail would be a level 5 DRA. So that's kind of, that would be in the range of the first quarter. And then Sally's bucket is a DRA 8, which is a little higher. So in this example here, the child might see this page and might say, the water came up to Sally's bucket. And I would say, all right, nice job. Good job at noticing at the beginning of the word there. And then I would say something like, you said, the water came up to Sally's bucket. Does that make sense? And the student would say yes. And I'd say, yes, it does make sense. But let's look more closely at what the author wrote. And then I would say something like, water. What do you hear at the sound of water? And they would say, the R sound. And I would say, right. So is this word water? And they would say no, because it ends with an S. And so we would then go and use some of those strategies. So I would say, well, check the picture. What would make sense? And maybe they would then come up with the word waves, noticing that it is actually a wave in the picture. Or, again, getting their mouth ready and looking at the ending sound, things like that. So checking the picture, thinking about what would make sense in the story, in the sentence. And then with sounding out, we do still encourage the sounding out with smaller words, like 2 to 3 letter words. They usually have the short vowel sounds. So like an example would be ran, an, so that they can still sound out. But again, other words that have more difficult, like long vowel spelling patterns, can be tricky to just straight sound out. And then again, when the student gets stuck, just have them reread that sentence and like see what might make sense. So these are all just strategies that we teach, that we'd like to see them using at home, or try to then adopt on their own once they get to independent reading. So I think that's all I was going to talk about for the first quarter.
Good evening, I'm Jane Metz. I'm another first grade teacher, and I'm going to talk to you about third and fourth quarter expectations and strategies. In third quarter, the reading level is expectation is 12 through 14 with a target of 14. 12 to 20 with a target of 14. And when I say target, it's a stronger level to be at to be able to move up to the next level. And once again, she mentioned the DRAs are what we are basing this on, and it's called a developmental reading assessment. And they had one at the end of kindergarten. There were some of them that we redid at the beginning of the year. And then they will have another one at the end of fourth quarter to assess where they are. Also, we may decide to do it just to see how they are doing. Are they progressing? Have they really gone further than what they're showing in reading groups? Because sometimes some children, even in reading groups, will get nervous about not knowing a word, or are they saying it right? Okay. We're trying at third quarter definitely to get them away from tracking with their fingers. A strategy for you to use for them not to be pointing word to word is, I'm going to take a page, is to run your finger just ahead of their reading. And it has a tendency, it's like matching, to see how they will follow. It starts training their eyes to read ahead, to become more fluent, because this is what we're expecting in third, fourth quarter, is to be more fluent with their reading. And Father, this is, I wanted to pick it up and show it to you. It's Father Bear Surprise. And this is a level 13, which would be the, not the 14 that we're looking for at the end of third quarter, but it's getting there. So we'll show this as an example. We want them to start paying attention to word endings, because many of them would say, more snow fell that night. It went on snow for days. And we'd have to remind them to look at the ending. That the word, the base word is there, but the ending is changed. And then at this time we might talk about how snowing means it's doing it now, you know. And whereas snow in the beginning was a noun. So we start talking about nouns and verbs. Okay. If they make a mistake, encourage them to look back, make the correction, and then start over again, because that's going to build the fluency. Because if they just say, I want on snowing, okay, does that make sense? Okay, and then they'll look at, oh no, went. Well, then have them start at the beginning and say, oh, that's much better, so you can understand. Self-corrections. Once again, she mentioned where we check, for example here, they might go the and then not recognize the word three, but turn and say it there. So you would want to say, does that make sense? The there bears, look at the picture. Now what might that word be? Another strategy to help them out. Okay. They should check to say, does it sound right? Does it make sense? Does the picture and the words go together? We understand that because we know the vocabulary, but especially if children, and like she said, I still at this level will do picture walks. I still will point out certain words that I feel that they may not know the meaning. We talk about how would you use that word.
Sandra, can you please come to the office?
Now, by the end of fourth quarter, when they're headed on to that big second grade, their target, I mentioned, was 16 to 28 with a target of 18. And at this level, in fourth quarter, we're really focusing on the comprehension. And not only understanding what the story was about, but they need to pay attention to the characters. Because at that level with the DRA evaluation, the kids are asked to retell the story in a sequential order. And the assessment, you do. Did they tell it in order? How many prompts did you have to give them before they could tell you the whole story? Did they use the characters' names? So we're wanting to know, are they really understanding what they're reading? So they were also introduced to the fact that there's quotation marks and comma, which comma means, period, you definitely stop. Comma is just a pause. I always tell them, take a little breath. And in this part, if they would read it, it's not fair, said Nathan, you might remodel it for them by saying, it's not fair, said Nathan. So they understand that the quotation marks is what he's saying, you're not just reading anymore. Okay. They had fun. I will mention a time. I had a meeting to go to, and Ms. Weatherspoon came in and she took over my reading lesson, and she was doing, she was modeling how to say and give expression with the stories, and they were going, yes, laughed Dad, and then so then she go, now you do it that way, and they were going, yes, laughed. They had a great time instead of just reading the words, giving expression, so you might try that at home so that they're, think about when you went to school and you heard someone reading a book and it was just really, no expression. It's not as exciting. And so they can do that for themselves, so they can hear it and get more excited about what they're reading. Okay, and this story is wet weather camping. And it's a level 18, which is where we want them to be. And even at a level 18, we still do our picture walks. We talk about, asking the 5 W questions, which are who, what, when, where, and why. You might want to have to ask. Somebody may never have been camping before. They would not know what you would need. So talking about these things beforehand. We're asking them to pay attention to the punctuation. For example, on the same page, then Mom said, why not? So you have to know that the question mark, she's asking a question, so their sound, their expression should change. Also, they're learning to understand the meaning of bold print. Okay, we're on page, but it's got gold print here. See, you are good at fishing, so they know that they need to get a little bit more expression there, and that their emphasis should be on the R. They practice reading longer and fluent phrasing, so they should not, even though right here it says, "Can we sleep down here in the tent, all by ourselves tonight?" That might, for them, think really hard, but if they keep practicing it, say, "Well, try it again." Covering everything. At this time, you want to remind them again about their reading strategies to try it out. Read the sentence before, read the sentence after. Can you figure out then maybe what the word is? If they get frustrated, model a strategy for them. Some of them get frustrated if they can't get it the first time and they're not knowing. Tell them it's okay to make mistakes with characters' names and places and events that they're not familiar with. Okay. After you read with them, this is when you need to ask them if they to be able to understand. Explain what was the main thing going on. What was the beginning, the middle, and the end? That's the basic sequence story. But we've been even doing. We did Stellaluna, and we went not just the beginning, but what happened in the beginning. Name me a couple of things that happened in the middle. So they're paying more attention to the details in the story. We're also already working on text-to-text connections. Even kindergarten does that, because I know that's how some of them, I've had them the other day. Hey, that reminds me of another story I read. And then, oh, I've done that before. So they're already getting those skills that they are expected to have. At some point, sometimes at this level, we will start literature circles, and that's where each person is given a job about the story after they've read it in a reading group. Then they may be sent off to the, well, actually it would be modeled first what each job is, and then one would be finding out what is the main idea. Another person's job would be talk about the characters. That is hard for, I found first graders when you ask them, so what kind of character was George at the beginning of the story? How was he at the end of the story? What do you think may have changed his mind? So they have to ask themselves questions like this at the higher level. So Ms. Nauyokes is now going to talk to you about spelling.
Thanks again for everyone for coming out tonight. I'm gonna do things a little. I'm gonna talk about the sight words first. So in first grade, we have 400 sight words, and they are in a list, an alphabetical order list. And so over the years, I'm trying to figure out how are we going to teach 400 sight words. We decided to divide the sight words up into 10 words a week. And we did it in a way that as the year progresses, we can do it in ABC order. So we tried to pick one with a different letter of the alphabet. And we do activities with the sight words weekly. We send the sight words home in the newsletter, so you have them 10 words a week. So if you wanted to make flashcards and practice those at home, that would be a great idea. And sight words are different from the spelling words, because the sight words don't follow a pattern like the spelling words do. And some of the activities that we do in the classroom, they're handing out examples of some of the activities we do in the classroom, but we exercise the words. So if you could stand up right now, we're going to show you one of the activities that we do with the sight words. And I'll just put one list up here. All right. So we cheer them, we exercise them, we run them, we jump them, we skip them, anything to get the kids moving and remembering the words. So we could try cheering. Can you see that okay? All right, so we can cheer them, okay?
No,
So
pom-poms.
That's okay, we'll pretend we have pom-poms, okay? All right, so Okay, so the first word is after. So we'd say after, so we always have to say the word first. So we'd say after. Give me an A, give me an F, give me a T, give me an E, give me an R. After. And so, and the children lead this, so they get to pick their activity. So the next one is box. Give me a B, give me an O, give me an X, box. So, and the next word was cut, right? Give me a C, give me a U, give me a T, cut. You know, we do other things, whatever the children want to do. If they want to jump them or run them, whatever, we do that. And that's a real quick activity. And it's good after they've been sitting for a while, get them up and get them moving. Okay? So that's what we did with the sight words. So there are 400 of them, and we did divide them up, like I said, 10 per week to make it a little bit easier. And these are the words that they find in their reading, and like they don't follow a pattern. So if you can, you make flashcards at home. That's super important because then your child will be able to recognize the sight words more readily when they're reading. All right, you can go ahead and take a seat now. And then the next thing, and your teachers have lists of the sight words. If you want them, we have them by quarter. If you need them, just let us know. Okay. The next thing that I'm going to talk about is spelling. Okay. And spelling is different than the sight words. What we do with the spelling, we do use words their way, and we give the students a spelling assessment, a spelling inventory. And this is an example of one of the children's spelling assessments. We give them 25 words. And on these 25 words, we're looking for what sounds the children know in the words. Like, do they know their beginning consonants and their ending consonants? Do they know their vowel sounds? And when we correct the test, on this. And you have a copy of this on your table. This is the actual, what do you call it? This is how we grade the spelling inventory. So when we give the test, we say to the child, listen to the word, put down whatever you can hear. Because the child may hear an ending sound, they may get the ing in a word, and they'll get credit for that. And what we're mostly looking for is, you know, where do they come up not knowing the spelling words? Where do they come up with making errors? And that's where we start the children. Most children in first grade already have the initial and final consonant sounds, and the majority of them fall in the short vowels. So they're still trying to discern the short vowel sounds. Other kids, they'll come up maybe with the long vowel patterns, but it's very rare that we get kids in the other vowel pattern ranges. That's more like the end of second grade. So we generate the word lists. As you know, I should have brought a spelling list. I forgot a spelling list. But we generate the words to go along with wherever they're at. Like, we have these word sorts, and they usually start with comparing short vowel families like at and an with pictures, and then they go on to go in and they mix up the vowels, so they'll have like A and I, and the children have to, there's pictures. The pictures are actually better than the words, because on the pictures they have to say the words and they really have to listen to the vowel sounds. So this one here, the child would be working, they're all CVC words at the beginning. They're all consonant, vowel, consonant words. And those are words that first graders should be able to spell. If they come up to me and ask me to spell a CVC word, I'm like, no, you have to spell that one, sound it out. Get them to stretch out the sound. This one here, it's short A like cat and short O like sock. So they have to look at the picture and they have to say, well, what is the picture? Is it a cap or a hat, a fox, you know, so then they would put it under the header. These are the headers. Okay, and there's examples of the sorts that the children did in the classroom here. You know, so you can see this is stuff that we do in the classroom. We do not send this home. And the pictures help them listen to the vowel sounds and learn the vowel sound. Okay. And there's also an example of a sort on your table. So if you look in the plastic bag, in the plastic bags we have an actual sort for you guys to try to figure out. What we did was we put, there's the whole sort, and this is what the child will get on Monday, and they color it, and they cut it, and they sort it. So if you want to take a minute, there is one that is cut up inside there. You're going to take it and sort it to see what your child goes through here in school. So just like when we send the spelling journals home every day, on the spelling notebooks like they do 3 times each on Monday, in the classroom we do that same type of word work with the sight words. So they're getting sight word activities in the classroom, and they're doing the spelling activities at home. So they do the 3 times each, the rainbow right, the word pictures. Now some of the adults have, some of the parents don't understand what the word pictures are. And what you do is you draw a picture to go with the word, and then if you can't think of a picture to go with the word, then you can use the word in a sentence. Okay, there are some, we have them draw a picture and write a sentence in school as practice with the sight words, so that they would be able to do that at home with the spelling. Okay, so the spelling words definitely have a pattern. The sight words do not. The spelling, and that's pretty much the difference. And the sight words are words that they see all the time in their books. And there's also a list on your table. We gave you a list of the common sight word. Where'd that one go? Yes. In this list right here, this gives you a lot of on the front side, it's all the word families, most common chunks or word families. And these two, when you see the chunks of the word families, this is how you can help your student sounding out words when they're reading. So if you can see, like, they can say, look for the chunk that you know. Look for, that's really important. And as they progress with their spelling, they should be better about pulling out the chunks. And if you see on the back side of it, these are the long vowel sounds and the blends. So this is what spelling words. All right, so go ahead and do your sorting activity, and that's all that I have for this evening. And I just want to reiterate what Ms. Metz says is you model it for them and then have them read it back, and that's going to really help with their fluency.
And I was just going to mention on your way out over by the computer area over there, we do have a little take-home sheet here. It just talks about some of the things we mentioned, just some of the prompts that you could say, like, does that make sense? You said blank. Does that make sense? Look at the picture. So just a couple little reminders of things that we do, some of those reading strategies, and it goes more in depth in the back as well. So make sure to grab one of those on the way out.
Thank you for coming out. Now, is kindergarten?
Yes. So, all the way off? All the way? Smart words. I'm not sure about that.
We need to unplug the Elmo?
Now we're trying to figure out.
There we go.
That's a different.
I think you have to press it one more time. I think you have to press it one more time.
Oh,
Okay.
thank you.
So, hi everybody, I'm Ramona Richardson and I teach kindergarten, and I'm here with my colleague Jamie Pohl. So we're going to tell you a couple of activities that you can also adapt to if you have older students, like the first or even older than that you can adapt. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is a letter recognition game, and I'm going to ask my friend Anna to come up here and play this game with me. So what I have on here are pictures and letters. So there's 2 sets of the alphabet on these popsicle sticks, and this is a Go Fish game. And there's a couple of different ways that you can play it. So if you have older students, you could put some of these sight words on there and play the same game. Or you could put words that they might need to know for some upcoming test, and it could be the same game. So Anna, come over here, and I'm going to give you 5 cards, and I'm going to take 5 cards. And the reason we put them on popsicle sticks is because little fingers can hold these sticks, whereas if they were on flashcards or a little bit bigger, it might be a little bit harder for them to hold. So, first game is going to be a letter recognition game. So I would say, Anna, do you have the letter H?
Yes.
You do? Well then, I would have a match because I have 2 H's. These letter recognition pictures, and you're going to be able to have these resources at the end of the meeting today. We suggest that you show them with the picture first, so mentally they have something to connect to, and then later you can cover up the picture if you want them just to recognize the letter. So I'll get in another turn since I got a match. Do you have the letter J?
No.
So now you say go fish.
Go fish.
So then I would have to take one out of here. All right, you can ask me.
Do you have an M?
Yes. So you put your match down. You can just put it on the chair. And now you can ask me another letter.
Do you have the letter Q?
Nope, go fish. So once they know their letters, then you can move on to sounds. So you can use the same game, and you can say, Anna, do you have the letter sound D? D.
No.
Go fish. No, that's me. You have to say go fish.
Oh.
Say go fish. Because you don't have it, right? Say go fish. I'm going to fish. All right. So what we want to be careful of in kindergarten, we have children that come into kindergarten and they put an A onto the sound. So instead of saying, for example, the letter M, they're saying ma instead of mm. Or they'll say, for the letter L, they'll come in and they'll go la instead of ooh. You have to really isolate that sound. And in kindergarten, we give what's called the Phonemic Awareness Literacy Screening Assessment. And if they add that A onto that sound, it's marked incorrect. So anytime you can make a game out of practicing a skill, even though it might be the very fundamental basic skill for the beginning readers, it's going to give the child a lot more practice and also make it fun for them. So I'm going to show you another game you can do. Go ahead and put these back in here. So we're also going to make these resources available for you, and these are the same picture cards, but they're on bigger cards, which you can use for flashcards. And if you are able to isolate which letters your child needs practice with, or words, again, this is something you can adapt if you have the sight word list that you're practicing with your child for first grade. And if you can isolate which ones they need the most practice with, and I would suggest doing like 5 at a time, you can just throw those onto the floor. So I'm going to put some on the floor here. Make sure you're in a carpeted area, and do like maybe 5 at a time, and then you can say, all right, Anna, get ready. Jump on the letter R. And then again, you can make that into a sound game, and you can say, jump on the letter that makes this sound. Same thing can be used for if you have words. So just another way to practice with your child other than just, showing them cards and having them memorize it. So now, thank you, Anna. I'm going to pass it over to Miss Pohl, and she's going to give you some ideas on how to do upper and lower case recognition.
So I have a game as well. It's a memory game that I think we've all heard of. So this is also on the back table back there. And it has lowercase and uppercase letters. And I've cut them out into these little boxes. And so you'd put them all down, facing down. I'm only going to put a couple down. All right, Anna, pick up one. What letter is it? L, lowercase or uppercase?
Lowercase.
Lowercase L. Okay, pick another one. V. So is that the uppercase L?
No.
No. So you didn't make a match, so you put them both back face down. So then it would be my turn, and I would go. And I would say, we've been playing for a while, so I remember that the uppercase L is over here somewhere. So I would pick up another one. And this one, uppercase L and lowercase L. So I would have a match, and I would keep this. And then it would be Anna's turn again. And you can adapt this also. It can be a memory game with sight words. It can be a memory game with, like Miss Richardson said, any other words that they might have to know. When she was talking about the letter pronunciation, I thought about other letters such as the letter G. When they say G, that's also not right. We have to say that that's incorrect. So I just wanted to point that out as well. Putting an on the end of words, duh. It is hard. It's hard to say d instead of duh, or w instead of wa. But those are things that we have to mark incorrect when we do an assessment like the PALS assessment.
Also, I might suggest that in kindergarten, we do only the short vowel sounds and we do the hard consonant sounds.
Yeah, good point. So I think we're ready to move on.
To now, Miss
Miss
Martin.
Martin, if you want to come on up.
Anna, come on over here.
Yeah. You want to hold him or? Are you okay? Tell me what to do.
You have like 30 things in your hand, Mom.
And then I'll see if he'll go to you.
So I brought a sidekick. This is Thomas. He's 2.5 months. And that's his big sister. I'm Megan Martin. I'm one of the ESOL teachers here. And that would be great. Sure.
Can we put tape in?
Yeah, we're going to put a non-technological item on the smartboard.
And then if you could move over closer to the table, that would be
Sure.
great. Thank you.
So, kind of like what Ms. Nemero did, I'm going to talk about things you can do with books beyond just reading them. And so on everyone's table, you should have Carlos Goes to School, one in English and one in Spanish. And then there's question cards, one side's English and one side's Spanish. But the questions do not correspond, like what's the most important thing in English? On the back, it does not say what's the most important thing in Spanish, because I couldn't get the copier to do it. But I think y'all can figure it out. And then there's also picture cards like this. And so I'm going to talk about how we could use this book and use these items to kind of make it a little more exciting reading experience for our little ones. And having a first grader myself, I get it. So the first thing is to look at the cover. So when we look at the cover of this book, what's one thing you see? Lady in green.
Oh, I see 3 kids.
Right. What's something you see on the cover?
The school bus.
The school bus. Great. So already we have all this great language we've used. We have 3 kids and we see a school bus. And we could ask our children, what does that make you think of? And if a child rides a school bus or they've seen buses in front of our school, they're going to say, oh, the school bus. This is the school bus. And then we could make a prediction. Like, what do you think the story would be about? Gentleman in the gray shirt.
Oh, sorry, I was
That's okay. What do you think the story would be about?
I don't have to go
Oh, geez.
Well, the kids going to school.
Great. So perfect prediction. The kids are going to school. Okay. Next thing, I won't go into it too deeply because Ms. Nemro talked about it, was do a picture walk. The one thing I'll add is sometimes hard for some of our kids that know multiple languages is to look at the facial expression of the character on the page and say, how is that person feeling? Are they happy, sad, tired, bored, scared? All those feeling words are really important to talk about, and sometimes we kind of blow right through them when we're reading a book, like, oh, we should talk about how the character is feeling, not just read the book. And one thing I find a lot of kids like is going on a word hunt. So if you have a highlighter at home, that's always fun. If you don't, no problem. Most kids would have 2 fingers. You go like this, and you can do what's called framing a word. And so I could say, we're going on a word hunt. Let's find the word get. And then I would teach my child how to take their 2 fingers and frame the word get on their page. And, oh, good job, you found a word. You're a word hunt detective. Another thing you can go on a hunt for is punctuation, which is a really big word for periods, exclamation points, or question marks. And I tell the kids I have this year from Ms. Poles and Ms. Richardson's group that periods are for telling, exclamation points are for yelling, and question marks are for asking. And on your books, you'll notice there's precisely drawn circles on each page by myself. And another thing you can do on a word hunt is to ask your child to count how many words are on each page. So they would go 1, 2, 3, 4. No, not like that. And they could tell you how many words are on the page. They could also ask them to point to the first word or the last word, which is also really good to kind of support them when they take PALS testing, which they do in the fall and the spring. And finally, the last thing is to just read it. Read the book, have fun. I want to talk a little bit about this. If you have a kindergartner, this book would be fun to do at home. And so this is just a picture sort. You can ask your child to sort things you would put in a backpack. Like you would probably not fit a chair in your backpack. So that would go in the non-backpack side. But you might put a ruler or a sweater. Probably not a sister. Probably not a rod. And so that's a good way to kind of reinforce the concepts in the book. And the last thing is questioning. These question cards are from a website called Reading A to Z. If your students are on Raz Kids, if you've seen that, it's the same company. Just some things to think about beyond just retell the story. And the last thing on your tables is this tips for kindergartners. It's in English and Spanish. This website, Coloring Colorado, has a lot of good activities for families, and pretty much all of it is free. It's like a PDF download. And you can go on, and if your child, even like a 3rd grader, has a reading comprehension test coming up, you can go on there and think, how can I support my child getting ready for this test? And there's a lot of great things on there. So, that's all I got. Any questions? Ready to go into this? Thank you.
And then I'm Lisa Zelenka, and I'm the reading specialist here at Kohl's. And I wanted to just review some of the things that we talked about tonight and show a few things about ways that you can encourage reading with your children at home. So one important thing that we talk about here at school and that for you to remember at home is that print can be a lot of different things. It doesn't necessarily always just have to be in books. Print can be in magazines, print can be in newspapers, print can be in recipes. So print can take a lot of different forms. A lot of times we'll have students who are maybe a little bit of a reluctant reader that don't necessarily like to read big, thick books, but maybe they like comic books, or maybe they like to read graphic novels, or maybe they like to read magazines, and all of that is reading. So we encourage them to read all different kinds of genres and prints. even things like catalogs have prints in them. Scrapbooks can have print in them. Instructions, a lot of students like putting things together. So reading the directions on how to put a toy together might be really interesting to them. Especially when students are younger, we start by teaching them environmental prints, and a lot of times that's something that they just pick up on their own. A lot of children know that when they see this yellow M, that means McDonald's. Very early on, they pick up that this red shape means stop. So that can be something that you even talk about while you're in the car. Oh, do you see that sign? What does that sign say? And then, you know, as they're getting older, oh, how many letters are in that sign? What's the first letter? What does that letter sound like? So all these different types of print are some things that can build literacy and build their letter and sound knowledge and also their comprehension of what things mean. Something that we start teaching students in kindergarten is directionality, which way they read. In English, we read from left to right, but in a lot of other languages, they read from right to left or from top to bottom. So that's something that we sometimes might take for granted that students know, but it is a concept that we have to explicitly teach, that we move from right to left, and then also that when we come to the end of a sentence, we have to start back at the beginning of the next line and continue to go from left to right. We call this return sweep. That's something that can be very confusing for beginning readers because sometimes they'll think that when they come to the end, they just go right down instead of going to the end and then coming back to the beginning and continuing with their left to right reading. So sometimes if you're reading out loud to your children, if you track with your finger to show them the words as you're reading, it can help build that knowledge of directionality. So you're showing them the words and the way that you're moving through the print as you read it. Even with younger children that you have at home, 2, 3, 4 years old, this is a good activity to do because it helps to build their knowledge of directionality. We did already talk a lot about pictures, and Mrs. Martin was talking about pointing and counting words on the page. And she also talked about the different kind of punctuation marks. And quotation marks are another kind of punctuation mark, along with commas, that once students are in first grade and second grade and third grade, then they should really know that when they see those quotation marks, that means that somebody is talking. Commas are tricky, and a lot of times commas, they'll get confused with apostrophes. So we talk about commas as being a place for you to take a little breath or a little break when you're reading. So some things that you can do at home to encourage your children to be readers is to be a good role model for reading yourself, letting your child see you read, whether it be reading books, reading the newspaper, maybe you're reading on your tablet, but letting them see that reading is important to you. It's also great if you're able to start a small library at home. Even if you have a basket as a place that you store your books. Shoe boxes can be a great place to keep books. If you have a shelf or a little tub that you designate as a special place for books, that's just a good habit to get into. And then anytime they get a book, a lot of teachers will give books out at school for prizes, or sometimes they'll give books as a Christmas present. Anytime they get a book from a relative, if it goes into their library, then they'll start to build up their own little personal library at home. And it's also great to be able to give your child background experiences, because like the first grade teachers were talking about a book about camping. You know, some of children, if they've never been camping before, it might be hard for them to understand that book. So any kinds of experiences that you can do together with your children, going to the zoo, going to the park, going to a museum, those kinds of things will help them understand when they come across those concepts in a book. So, you know, and we're lucky around here. We have a lot of nice free museums that we can go to. A lot of the parks and a lot of the libraries do free programs. So anytime you can take advantage of those, it really helps to build their background knowledge. And reading to your child daily, no matter what language you read in, is always very valuable. It's a good time for you, you know, to spend time together. It reinforces that reading is important to you, as well as reading is important for them to be able to do academically. Okay? And then visiting the public library is another great way to encourage reading. I know we have the Independent Hill Library, which is nearby. That one is a little bit smaller, but there is also a new library down in Montclair, which is bigger, and that's not too far away. And I've heard that that one's very nice also. So anytime that you can go to the public library, they have books as well as other resources that you can check out. And they have computers that you can use at the library. And a lot of times students get really excited about being able to get their own library card. It's free, they don't have to pay for it. And that can be another way to motivate them to read, is they can have their own library card. And a lot of times people do that even for a birthday or for a present. You know, they get to go to the library and get their own library card, and it can be exciting for them. And we've talked about the letters and the sounds. And there is a list here. This was the website that Mrs. Martin was talking about. And this will be on a handout that we have for you to take home as well. But just some books and online resources that you can access from home. Raz Kids is a site that you need a subscription for, but most of the classes here do have that subscription. So students can use that here at school and then at home also. So we'll have this on the handout for you when you leave, and those are just some examples of good literacy websites. Does anyone have any questions about anything that we talked about tonight, or anything that you wanted to know a little bit more about? We do have all of the handouts over at the back table over by where Mrs. Metz
Where they check
is
out at
standing.
library?
And then there's also flashcards that you can take home with you, and the popsicle sticks for the matching games the kindergarten teachers were showing you. So that will be available, whatever you would like to take home with you. Please help yourselves.
What about these books?
And yeah, the books are yours to take home also.